The Call 6 investigator spent the last 2 years following the growing number of people calling themselves sovereign citizens. Some don't believe in government authority, others carry badges claiming to be diplomats. Now, Call 6 investigator Rafael Sanchez has more on how people in the movement are branching out, catching innocent people in the middle. Rafael.
Todd, good evening. We dug through state and federal records and uncovered people going to the extremes to prove that they have special rights, rights not recognized in any of the 50 states, rights that has law enforcement on alert. Joseph Satterfield is taking steps to fix a home he envisions being his prized possession.
Pretty much had to just rip the whole house apart from the basement to the attic.
The house had been vacant for months until the Satterfields bought it from TM&J Youth Foundation. But days before paying off the property, the Satterfields were stunned to learn TM&J did not own the home or have any right to sell it.
You had no idea. You were just going about your business, working on this house, making your payments, and then bam.
Nothing.
Right.
Squat.
The real owner? The city of Indianapolis. Meet Sheila Amos, the woman who runs TM&J and a self-proclaimed sovereign citizen. She's part of a movement in which some members believe they're entitled to create their own deeds and take over vacant properties. The Marion County Prosecutor's Office says Amos and notary Beverly Kennedy then tried to sell the homes, misleading dozens of families.
We officially found out we are squatters.
What does that mean when you say you're squatters?
We are
Illegally here,
yeah,
basically.
This is not our home. We're not supposed to be here.
Amos is in jail and declined to talk to the Call 6 investigators. We caught up with Kennedy after a court appearance on the criminal charges.
Are you a sovereign citizen or was this a mistake from the state?
Just talk to my attorney.
The Southern Poverty Law Center, which tracks what it calls extremist groups, estimates there are 300,000 sovereigns nationwide. Many of them, as we've seen in Indiana, also create their own license plates and IDs with badges and believe they're exempt from taxes, traffic tickets, and mortgages.
That is why they are considered by federal, state, and local authorities as potential terrorists, and we deal with them as such.
That's why the Joint Terrorism Task Force in Indianapolis investigates sovereign activity.
In an era of post 9/11, you can never be too careful when someone who openly recognizes no authority above their own is acting and behaving and conducting themselves in these ways.
Over the past year, sovereigns have demanded from city and state entities $2 million per traffic stop since they believe it's a violation, Todd, of their rights.
And Rafael, sovereigns also have a special connection to their birth certificates?
Yeah, sovereigns believe that their birth certificates are linked to a special stash of cash at the U.S. Treasury that they can actually send a letter to the U.S. Treasury and say, hey, send me some money. No fund such exists as you could imagine, and you have a better chance of winning Powerball and contacting the U.S. Treasury for that special stash of cash. It does not exist.
I'm glad to hear that's not happening, but the rest is outrageous.
It is completely outrageous, and we'll continue to follow the people in this movement because, as you saw, they're hurting a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. All right, nice job.
Thank you, Rafael.
Governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed.
So if you don't consent to being governed, does the law not apply to you?
Whoa, whoa, whoa. This is assault. This is assault. You've broken my windows. I do not consent. I do not consent.
Does this guy really think that by saying those magic words, the cops will just be like, oh, sorry, our bad, you're free to go? I say that jokingly, but I also know the answer. Yes, he does. This video is brought to you by Brilliant. These people go by multiple different names around the world. They're known as free men on the land in the UK and the various Commonwealth realms. But here in the United States, they're typically known as sovereign citizens. But they also sometimes call themselves free inhabitants.
But we told you he's an Article 4 free inhabitant, so he does not have to have a license.
While this movement has more or less always existed, it really took off during the 1970s, with people publishing books and giving seminars on how they could get out of speeding tickets or paying taxes, which is why sovereign citizens and and tax protest movements often go hand in hand. Over the decades, they've become much more violent, with law enforcement having to go through special training on how to deal with them. They've even been labeled as a domestic terrorist movement. Terry Nichols, an accomplice to the Oklahoma City bombing, was a sovereign citizen. They also employ a number of paper terrorism tactics, including putting false liens on your property. There are currently 300,000 sovereign citizens in the United States, significantly larger than any other group I've talked about recently. A sovereign citizen is someone who believes that they are not subject to the jurisdiction of a government, be it federal or state, or that the government itself is illegitimate, so they are sovereign. Legal word. Sovereign. It's a legal word. There are 3 flavors of sovereign citizens. Firstly, there are the religious types, the ones who believe that only God can rule over them.
You are not God. You have no jurisdiction over me.
There really isn't much else to say about them. The second group is a little more nuanced, the diplomatic types, who believe that since they are not citizens of the United States, they are granted diplomatic immunity.
That law only applies to U.S. citizens.
Well, where are you a citizen of?
I am not a U.S. citizen.
Well, see, that's
I am a free inhabitant. I am of the earth. I do not belong to any corporation. I do not belong to any country.
Yeah,
no, a free inhabitant. They are allowed to. They're free people. They have all of the rights of a U.S. citizen without following any of their laws.
This is ridiculous. For several reasons. Even if you are not a US citizen, while you're in the physical United States, you have to follow the laws of the United States. Even diplomats have to follow the law. It doesn't work in reality the way it works on TV. If I go to England and I get pulled over for driving on the correct side of the road, I don't get to say, I'm not a British citizen, your laws don't apply to me. The third group is a lot more complicated, the constitutional types, who have multiple theories about why the US federal government is not legitimate. And like all good things, they come in threes. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. We all agree with that. Well, most of us agree with that. The preamble, the first paragraph which explains this document's purpose, starts with,
"We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union."
A more perfect union. More perfect than what? If you took high school civics or went to elementary school, you should know that before the Constitution, we had the Articles of Confederation, which were very imperfect. The first subgroup of constitutional sovereign citizens believe that the Constitution was never successfully ratified and that we are still living under the Articles of Confederation.
Article 4, free inhabitant pursuant to the Articles of Confederation. You can look it up. It's in the United States Book of Codes.
The United States Book of Codes doesn't exist. I have no idea what she's talking about. Unless she's trying to cite US Code, which several other sovereign citizens do in order to try and say that they're not citizens but nationals, which still makes you subject to the laws of the United States. So what is a free inhabitant?
The better to secure and perpetuate mutual friendship and intercourse among the people of the different states in this union, the free inhabitants of each of these states shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of free citizens in the several states.
All this means is that if you live in one state and you travel to another state, you are legally treated the same as a citizen of that state. Free inhabitants and free citizens are not mutually exclusive terms. Just because you freely inhabit one state doesn't mean that you're not also a citizen of that state. But none of this matters anyway because we don't live under the Articles of Confederation. At least, we don't. The rest of society has decided to follow the Constitution now. It's been like 230 years. It's time to get on board.
Are you a U.S. citizen?
No.
You're not a U.S. citizen?
I was not born in Washington, D.C. or any territory of the under federal jurisdiction, so no, I'm not a U.S. citizen.
Were you born in the United States of America? In any of the states?
I was born in America. Yes, I'm a state citizen of one of the several states.
This particular brand of sovereigns agree that they are a citizen of one of the several states, but do not agree that they are a U.S. citizen. They at least agree that the Constitution is law, so that's progress. But they have an interesting interpretation of the 14th Amendment, which among other things created birthright citizenship. And according to sovereign citizens, a second tier of citizen.
All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside.
They believe that this amendment created federal U.S. citizenship alongside state citizenship. According to them, when it said the word "and" there, that is denoting a separation of the two rather than a conjunction. And that is somewhat true. Along with being an American, you are also a Californian or Oklahoman. It's also why we pay state income tax and there is in-state college tuition. But again, these aren't mutually exclusive. You are both rather than one or the other. Likewise, they believe that the only way to become a U.S. citizen is to either opt in, which we'll get to, or be subject to the jurisdiction thereof. This line is very important to sovereign citizens. Only people born in Washington, D.C. or a federal territory were born under the jurisdiction of the federal government. Therefore, they are not U.S. citizens, they are state citizens. Just for the record, most laws that sovereign citizens get in trouble for, like speeding or DUIs, are state laws. Even murder, for the most part, is a state crime. So I'm not entirely sure why they give cops and courts such a hard time. Unless they think laws only apply to some abstract concept of a person rather than actual flesh and blood people. So let's talk about the sovereign citizens who think that laws only apply to some abstract concept of a person rather than actual flesh and blood people.
You'll need to meet your straw man. He was born the same day you were. He looks like you, has the same name, and lives in your house. From every birth certificate, a legal personality, or legal fiction, is created with the same name to confuse little old you into thinking it's you. So, there is a human you and a paper you.
In 1933, the United States abandoned the gold standard and allowed the dollar to become a free-floating fiat currency. Sovereign citizens believe that at this point, the government lost its legitimacy. They created a legal paper identity for every person in order to back up that fiat currency, known as a straw man or corporate shell. They believe that this corporate shell identity holds money in a secret government account. They will only accept payment in silver or gold, but will happily make payments in bills of exchange, which pay out of that secret government account. The only way to access this account is by reclaiming your sovereignty and separating your corporate personhood from your flesh and blood individual.
I am an individual, not a person.
You're not a person.
Yes, sir. David Hall is a person. I am a private individual. David Hall is a person under color of law, sir.
Okay, where's David Hall then? The person David Hall.
He exists on paper, sir. David Hall is a corporation.
I'm not a person. See, you deal here with Admiralty Maritime Jurisdiction, which deals with persons, which I am not.
He's not in some weird maritime merchant marine court. This is the American flag, and this is how it appears on soldiers' uniforms, police uniforms, and even some courtrooms. You see that little gold fringe around the edge there? To a sovereign citizen, that makes it an admiralty flag, which means it only has jurisdiction over maritime and certain commercial laws. Of course, that's not what it means to the rest of us, or even the flag code. The gold fringe around the flag is literally the only accessory to the flag that is neither required nor prohibited, and it has no legal meaning. There's no law saying that gold fringe makes it a naval ensign. And this is where we can really get down to the heart of what sovereign citizens believe, that through some loophole or turn of phrase, they can make it so that the laws don't apply to them. That's not the right flag. This court doesn't have jurisdiction in this matter. I wasn't driving, I was traveling.
Well, I'm traveling in my car, I'm not like driving, I'm not using it for like...
You're not driving right now?
I'm traveling in my vehicle.
You used the term driving, and I was traveling, sir. Traveling.
I'm not a person, I'm a flesh and blood individual. As long as they don't consent to the fact that that paper straw man is them, they are exempt from our laws.
Can I see your Idaho state license?
No, I don't have one.
You don't have one?
My person does, but I don't. And I don't wish to create joinder with you.
Joinder is the connection between your corporate shell and you, the individual. Joinder is created when you accept any government document with that name on it, whether it's a birth certificate, social security card, or driver's license.
When you go to court, you represent your straw man. So you, the human, take on any costs, fees, taxes, and fines involved for the straw man. The human you doesn't even need to pay them. But you made a contract with the court by appearing on behalf of your legal personality or straw man.
There's also a heavy significance placed on capital letters. If the name is in all caps, it's referring to your corporate shell, not you.
Sometimes you'll see your surname in capitals, just like on a gravestone. That's because your straw man is dead and just a silly piece of paper.
This is why they don't carry any documentation or pay taxes or even accept mail with a zip code on it. They really do believe that by refusing these things or using the right combination of words in court, they are exempt from the law. I've used the word believe a lot in this video, which might be slightly unfair to other beliefs I've discussed in the past. Sovereign citizens are just plain wrong. They don't have faith in some untestable supernatural thing. They just have a woefully inaccurate misinterpretation of the law. Even if they believe that the government has no power and the laws don't apply to them, the rest of us do.
I do not consent! I do not consent! Help! Help! I do not consent!
The reason no one is helping is because As a society, we consent. And we have empowered certain individuals to ensure our safety and make sure everyone else is following the law and paying their taxes. Whether they be literal insane people or misinformed sovereign citizens. It doesn't matter whether you respect the authority of the government of the land you are currently in, because we do. And as a visitor, you have to respect that because now you know better.